Today, we're going to be reading chapter 21, part 2. So buckle your seatbelt, it's quite the ride, and we'll see you on the other side. On his days off, Agostino Macaringue liked to roam Ternosian Centrum. He would go nowhere in particular, following his footsteps wherever they took him. Sometimes he'd end up in back alley cafes or remote pubs. At other times on Dijkstraat, hanging out in the coffee shops, sampling the hundreds of different brands of cannabis the city had to offer. Today, he found himself on Dijkstraat for another reason. He needed to get rid of 80 kilos of hashish that was hidden in his flat. And what better place to do it, he said to himself. Although it was a large quantity, it wouldn't be unusual to find a lone tourist searching for the deal of a lifetime. The thought had occurred to him that he should break it up into smaller lots and sell it to various coffee shops. He soon realized that this was a ridiculous assumption to think that he would not be caught with such a plan. No, what he needed was a buyer out of France or Belgium, someone willing to take the whole lot for 50 cents on the guilder. Fucking Ternosian. No place like it. Supermarket for soft drugs for all of Europe. The Sam's Club for Amsterdam. Normally on his day off, the Mozambican would catch up with the locals, see what was new in town and what wasn't. All day he'd smoked weed and hashish and eaten until his belly ballooned. For Agostino Macaringue rarely stayed in one place too long. But after hours, the African could be found in one of several coffee shops. Or maybe at pubs like the Bundys or the Doors or Kalashnikov or the Lopin Das. By this time, the pleasure center of his brain would have caught fire. He could be heard telling childhood stories of strife and endurance, and how he had fled Mozambique at a most dangerous time. Agostino Macaringue, whose skin was as black as the richest soil from the Mississippi Delta, grew up in the port city of Maputo on the Indian Ocean. The youngest sibling of 14 brothers and sisters, the Mozambican understood hardship. He'd experienced the bear emotion at an early age. That his absentee father spent most of his time trading goods at the nearby port, and his mother, who had little time for him as she dealt with pregnancies of her daughters and diseases that her sons were bringing home from war, the young African had to fend for himself, giving him wisdom beyond his years. At the short age of 34, the Mozambican got his chance to leave the war-torn country. In 1975, after the Portuguese had pulled out most of their troops, Agostino embarked on a journey that led him to the Netherlands. He remembered the visa did not come cheap, some 25,000 guilders, most of his life savings. Nevertheless, it gave him the green card that he needed to work in Holland. The Mozambique started over. The people spoke with a guttural tongue, unlike the Romance language of Portuguese. For many years he toiled with the communication barrier, with the trilling R's and the guttural G's with the diphthongs. Eventually, though, he learned enough of the language to correspond and live comfortably in Holland. He did, however, catch a fair amount of grief because he often threw a bit of Portuguese and English into his new dialect, something he couldn't seem to stop, especially when he drank. His first few years proved to be most challenging, but eventually he embraced his new life. At times, the Mozambican thought about returning home to check on his family. In 1980, Agostino got that chance. Unfortunately, when he arrived, he found his mother on her deathbed. He remembered her voice, her frail words. "Agostino, my dear." A vibrating, withering sound came from her lips. "Your father died last year, murdered by the guerrillas. Your brothers were off at war. Your sisters could do nothing to stop them." She looked up at him with red, spidery eyes, her voice cracking. He would never forget that moment, and it would be the last time he ever saw his matriarch again. He sipped on a Heineken at the Bundys as he was telling the story. She died a few years later, he told the guy on the bar stool next to him. In the back of his mind, the Mozambican kept thinking how he needed to get rid of the dope. 80 fucking kilos, he said to himself. There must be someone willing to buy it. Augustino was over his limit and he knew it. Around him, the town whores jostled for position. Man, this town has a way of grating on you like chewing on sand. More than anything, he wanted to start over, take the money and do something good with it, like maybe build a big house for his sisters back home. In his drunken state, it was easy to admit that he was out of his league in a match orchestrated by the American who saw it for what it was, an opportunity, a chance to start over. A little voice inside his head told him that Constantine would stop at nothing to find his dope. Augustino Macaringue wondered if it was worth it, a life of financial freedom or a chance at death. High risk, high reward, his brother Gipano had said. The Mozambican pictured Constantine's goons popping out of an alley and slitting his throat, or burying him in one of those dike-buster holes, rumored to be a hot spot for tombs. When Augustino Macaringue entered the Bundys, Francoisa was tending to a handful of patrons. She filled in on his days off. The Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil came over the loudspeakers and rolled through the pub, the unmistakable sound of bongos thrumming to Mick Jagger's wild squawks. Call it paranoia, but he swore he just heard someone say something about Rucker and Hunt. Augustino Macaringue searched the crowd and saw nothing, only a few touristy faces among the locals. What is going on? Does somebody know something I don't? Or was he just a pawn in this game? One after the other, the questions came to him. Francoisa said, "You don't have to stick around if you don't want to. Everything's in order." "Do you have plenty of Orangina? I noticed yesterday that we were low." "It's all taken care of. Now skedaddle." Augustino gave her the thumbs up and said goodbye. He went across the street to the stair and found his usual seat near the espresso machine, one of two spots that occupied the bend. Sergio stood behind the bar, tending to a bunch of rowdy men. The old Terzo ninny and patted over and said to Augustino, "A fucking drink, Willie?" Augustino situated himself. "How goes it, Serge?" "Things could not be better, I finally got the bloody day off," Augustino said. "Heineken?" "Bedankt." Augustino pulled out a block of Sputnik hashish and began making a joint. Sergio said, "So, what are your final take is on all this shit? All day the people talk." Although he'd known Sergio for a long time, Augustino Macaringue would be careful. He knew Sergio worked for Constantine Vanderpoel. "I do not know," Augustino told the Dutchman. "Hunt has disappeared, and Rutger and Yanni are dead. Makes you wonder." Sergio merely offered a raised brow. Augustino sat there thinking, what in the bloody hell have I gotten myself into? If you guys enjoyed the video tonight, don't forget to like, leave a comment down below. Over here you'll find the full reading of Dutch Coffee Shop, or you can just click on that little picture of me, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you on the other side.